It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello, and welcome to Accelerate. Yeah, I'm excited to talk with my guest today. Joining me is Mohit Garg, founder of MindTickle, a company that markets a sales readiness platform. Now, with the explosion in the number of companies releasing products into the sales technology space, has come with an increased number of platform categories. There's sales acceleration platform, sales development platform, sales enablement platform, sales engagement platform, just to name a few. But my guest today, Mohit Garg, has developed a new platform, Sales Readiness, that, at least to my mind, is perhaps the most clear-cut of the categories in terms of its mission. And he's going to talk to us about sales readiness and what it means for you. So, Mohit, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andy. It's great to be on the show. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, thanks for joining us. So, take a minute, introduce yourself, sort of give us some background on you.
I'd be glad to. So my background is a combination of technology and business consulting prior to MindTickle. So I've been in the Valley for close to 20 years now, worked in 3 Silicon Valley startups, and was in the technology side of things, was always interested in how new products and solutions were disrupting the different spaces, supported the sales team in several ways as a technologist. Subsequently, at PwC, I was leading large projects and engagements, and I ended up selling services. And across the board, I could see a transition of how the nature of sales was changing, how the questions in sales discussions were getting more about how to communicate value proposition. So over the years, I gravitated towards sales technology. In 2012, I co-founded MindTickle with 3 more like-minded people, and we built a platform for gamified and engaging learning, which has morphed and evolved over the years to where we coined the term sales readiness because, like you so rightly mentioned, and thank you for your kind words, Andy, we wanted this to communicate the outcomes that our technology needs to deliver. Mm-hmm. And the outcome we want to deliver is for the customer-facing staff and salespeople to be ready to deliver great customer experience and deliver on their objectives in terms of sales numbers. So as a founder of one of the founders of the team, I have led our go-to-market efforts internally at MindTickle. So I dog food our own product. So I'm the user of our own technology.
Well, good.
So I lead sales and marketing at MindTickle, and it's been a rewarding learning journey. I've met so many great people. I continue to be extremely excited about this space.
All right. So first question before we jump into the serious stuff. So where'd the name come from?
Yeah, so the name was a lengthy discussion which spanned over a couple of weeks where we wanted to bring about a few themes. First, we wanted to challenge the dull, boring, and uninspiring enterprise sort of expectation of enterprise name and those gray fonts. So we wanted to be different. So that name really captured the essence of consumerization of the enterprise. And secondly, we wanted to communicate how you need to make the process of learning and absorption of the information that salespeople need to succeed to be fun and not intimidating, right? So we don't believe in draconian ways of beating down on salespeople and get them up to speed. So we thought that name really captured the essence of what we wanted to represent in a brand. And we're really proud and very excited about the name, and it's loved by our customers as well.
Oh, good. Well, and also it has the virtue of having no X, no Z, or no Q in it, which seemed to be a problem with most tech companies.
And an available domain name.
Well, certainly. That's why I think that's why there are so many X's and Z's in those names. So, yeah, if you pair 2 Z's together, your odds of getting the domain go up quite a bit. But okay, so in your mind, when you're starting this, and readiness has several dimensions. You talk about onboarding, you talk about ongoing training, keeping sort of continuous learning process that salespeople really need to go through. So let's sort of start with the fundamental thing. Is, in your mind, what was wrong with conventional sales training?
Yep, that's a great question. And this is a great place to start this conversation, Andy, because it's not like sales training hasn't existed, right? It's been existed for almost as long as sales has existed.
Yes.
But the question that people ask about MindTickle is why, and I think the better question is why now, right? And that's the background on which I want to build my argument. If you look at what's happened over the last perhaps 10 years, is that the nature of the sales process has changed significantly, right? Number one, if you think about the environment in which salespeople operate, it's a much more dynamic environment. There's something called business cycles. The business cycles have shortened. So an example of a technology product company business cycle would be how often do you update the product? How often do you enter new markets? How often does a new competitor come and challenge you? That process used to be maybe 6 months, 1 year, couple of years in some industries. These days, those kind of dynamic changes have to be adapted to in a matter of weeks. So a sales rep has to deal with how often product is getting updated, which could be a matter of weeks, or new objections coming on the field, which could be a matter of weeks. So the velocity of how sales reps need to be updated, that has increased significantly. And the old age methodologies of doing a boot camp every quarter or putting people into a classroom or doing a webinar every month, they were not designed to cater to such a dynamic environment. So
well, and actually, people's minds don't work that way anyway, and because people can't retain knowledge. I mean, it's not saying it's a problem, but it's just a general problem with people in general. The studies have shown that you sit in a classroom, within 30 days, you've lost 90% of what you learned.
Great point, Andy. Yeah, and that is the second part of my argument, because once you've answered about the business context on why such a gap exists in the market, the second question to ask is how do you fill that gap? Right? And the way you fill that gap is put the salesperson in the center of your sales readiness strategy. And you think about what would make the salesperson successful, right? And that's where you turn it on its head, as opposed to providing a pull environment where you provide a wiki or a repository and say, you know what, now I have an online method of keeping my reps up to date, and I'm going to build a repository with 200 documents. Now, that isn't exactly solving the problem. So it's about combining the user interactions with the right engagement techniques, the right user experience. It's about looking at data in a certain way that you're designing for usage and not just for shelfware. So those have been many of the ways we've been very successful at addressing this challenge that most organizations face today. Yeah. So it's been a learning journey for us. I think our product and solution today is evolved significantly from 4 years back when we started on this journey. And we are hungry learners. So one of the ways we think we'll thrive and succeed and help our customers is because we're never taking our success for granted.
Okay. No, which is very apropos for a company that's in the training and the learning business. So
absolutely.
Let's go through some of the challenges that you confront when companies confront, when they're in the sales business, and one certainly is hiring and onboarding new employees.
Right.
So that's one of the main challenges that you sort of taken on, and I think the accepted wisdom certainly in the SaaS space, software as a service space, and in the Valley is that 7 months is sort of the number you hear is how long it takes to get a rep from point you've hired them to the time that they're fully productive.
That is right.
And certainly the investors and the boards would like to see that at least cut in half.
Yep.
So let's start with the question, why is it taking 7 months?
Yeah, great question. So let me first remark on how ironic it is that the 7 months is in the business models of every company. I find that ironic because they take it as a given. Right? I like to shake up sales leaders by saying, why would you take it as a given?
Well, but I think if you're right, why'd you take it as a given? But also, you understand why those numbers sort of populate throughout the business plans in the Valley, because everybody says this is what. If I say anything different than this, the investors are going to think I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and that is where I think there is a belief we are creating in the industry that you needn't take the 7 months as a given. So let's answer why it is a 7-month period, right? We did a lot of analysis on what goes on in those 7 months. And there are 3 types of opportunities. And it's almost like a Maslow's pyramid where you can go with the low hanging fruit first. And the low hanging fruit of why it takes 7 months is because of the waste. There is a good amount of a month of or 2 months of waste in terms of inefficiency in onboarding processes. Right. So what does that mean? Today, when you think about boot camps, salespeople, when they're brought into an organization, they typically have the opportunity to go through a few days of boot camp. Now, prior to deploying MindTickle, our customers' boot camps would look like this. They would have sessions, some of these long form sessions where the production side of the house, the product teams will come and talk about the product. The marketing teams will talk about the brand and persona. So there was a lot of one-way delivery of information. And the salespeople were drinking from a fire hose. Now, I reference Salman Khan's Khan Academy, and this is very similar to where students come in and teachers go through coursework and kids take notes. So we took inspiration from why Salman Khan's flipped classroom model works really well. The reason Khan Academy does a great job, and this has been proven in several of the Bay Area schools where this has been implemented, if kids could take their pre-work and read up a chapter before they come into class, and in class, the teacher facilitates discussions. That makes for a richer experience, richer discussions, and better absorption. So these are one of the many ways how we have plucked low-hanging fruit, where we have eliminated waste in the onboarding process, where that 1 hour with a subject matter expert, as opposed to a one-way delivery or monologue of information, becomes a richer discussion because the pre-work is already done on a technology platform like MindTickle. The sales reps come prepared with the baseline knowledge, and the subject matter expert has a rich discussion about how that knowledge needs to be applied in the context of the customer's needs and conversations. The second area of low-hanging fruit is travel and all the time zone synchronization that needs to take place in a larger multi-location organization. When you are using technology the right way, then you bring people together for the most valuable interactions. And the interactions where you would be just passing on information, which doesn't require a human to be face-to-face, you can defer that to technology. And to your point earlier, from a user engagement perspective, people don't learn just by giving them bursts of information at one go. So if you're able to take that 7-month period and divide it into phases where you have a structured milestone-based plan, you have them go through weekly milestones or monthly milestones, and the reps track their progression, and the leadership team is able to see which reps are tracking, which ones need a little bit of developmental help. This tracking enables organizations to ensure that a 90-day mark, most of their new hire class, people brought in a cohort, they're ready to go into shadowing exercises or going into making some phone calls or sitting on support desks. We are, among many other opportunities, helping companies put a structure around the onboarding process, put milestones, put measurement, leverage technology the right way in a flipped classroom model, and compress the onboarding cycle. So last thing I would add is we have measured before after, and we have data points, and one of our customer, Avalara, worked very closely with us. We're very appreciative of the rigor they brought into this process, and they were able to measure, just because of low-hanging fruit, they were able to reduce the new hire ramp time by 40 days. Think about 40 days of additional revenue generation capacity.
Sure.
That's going to be huge for any sales leader.
Sure, when you're paying the salary of the people that are there, absolutely.
Big time. Big time.
So, yeah, I mean, I think one of the great things I saw about onboarding recently was, have you read Mark Roberge's book, The Sales Acceleration Formula?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Mark's great.
Yeah, a great book. And what they talk about is how they actually involve the people in their actual work as part of their training. And it seems like you sort of do that as well. At least I understood looking at the product is that through the role play capability that, you know, it's just not sitting in a classroom absorbing, but actually having to engage in activities that can be measured, coached, and so on.
Right. And those are the top two layers of that proverbial pyramid, right? So one is reducing waste. Second is providing practice in context of real customer scenarios. So if you only think about onboarding as knowledge acquisition, I don't think people think of that, but some people do. That's not the idea. The idea is how our customer-facing teams, sales team, customer success, sales engineers, applying that knowledge in context of the customer's context and needs.
Right.
So with the role play capability and some of the technology investments you've made, we provide a safe practice environment where you can paint a scenario. You can give the example of a certain prospect, which could be pulled from your own real examples. And you can give the buyer persona, company persona, and ask an account executive and say, hey, an SDR just qualified a prospect. These are the qualification notes. These are the people that you're going to call into. Can you deliver a 2-minute elevator pitch? And after you've delivered your own elevator pitch, we're going to show you best practice videos on how the best sales reps in the organization are delivering that elevator pitch. And you could do the same with objection handling and pricing discussions and whatnot.
Okay.
Codifying the sales process really helps, and giving that practice really helps. That's the second layer of how we provide faster onboarding.
The role play is such a key way to train people. So what you're doing is you're doing this through video. And so a couple questions that sort of come to mind. One is like the elevator pitch. They're getting on your system, they're recording a video. That's just them into the camera. Is, let's say, like an elevator pitch. But then do they have the capability of doing interactive role play as well?
Yeah. So this is where I like to draw upon the areas where technology does a great job and can be applied, and areas where technology gets too complex to be usable. Mm-hmm. Right? So when we think about developing technology and products, we think about how practical is the use case to be solved through technology. And when we applied this lens to this opportunity to role play and create mastery of the talk track, we found that any sales leader that we spoke with, and we challenged them and we said, can you think about few talk tracks or customer situations or conversations that if your salespeople could master, you would have 80% confidence that they're going to win in every conversation. And the sales leaders came up with a list. So we got a list all the way from how do they explain pricing to how do they position my solution versus a competitor solution. And that's the exercise we encourage each sales leader to do when they sign up with MindTickle. And the reality is sales conversations can be codified, not scripted. So this is where I become very specific about the terminology. Scripting sales conversation, we all know, has huge perils. In some very limited environments, it can work. But codification is where you become best practices, you bring right stories, you interweave the right sound bites that connect with the prospect. Codification doesn't have to be necessarily a bidirectional interchange. Creating a bidirectional interchange will require time zone synchronization. It will create the same kind of challenges that a traditional webinar or a classroom type of method has. You have to have the instructor's availability at the same time you have the student's availability. We didn't want to recreate the same challenges. So we do not do bidirectional role play. We have templates and best practices by which you can break down the opportunity stages into sales conversations, how an SDR would benefit from practice on how to leave voicemail, how to create urgency, whereas an AE would benefit from practicing a close-up conversation or demonstrating ROI. So breaking it down is key for succeeding with the role play strategy. And we do not only provide technology, we do a great job at providing the consulting and best practices on how salespeople should be using MindTickle to get the best of codification and mastery of the talk track.
Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking about that. I mean, I the problem with, sort of no interactivity on some role play is that you need to have that feedback. It's like a performer. That's trouble with sales. I mean, sales is performance art in many respects, right? And so part of what you say elicits a response, and so what you have to say next in a real conversation, the back and forth, is sort of based on that response you get. And that's codification. I agree 100%. That's really important because you codify questions and answers, questions, follow-on questions to your follow-on questions, and so on. So anyway, I understand why you do it the way you do. I still think there's a need for interactivity at some point in that onboarding process. It could be just maybe how people learn how to model the behavior is really the critical thing there.
Right. I would like to add to that, Andy, and we're not doing away with the role of a mentor or a coach or a manager, right? We don't believe in technology replacing the role of the human.
Oh,
right?
As much as a lot of managers would like you to.
As much as they would like us to, but technology is an amplifier. So my comment was not that interactive role play is not required. My comment was technology should not be solving for that.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fair.
So when we build products, we want to build products which are easy to use, and that has driven us to create the interactions that we produce in a product, which is based on codified scenarios. Our customers combine the MindTickle practice with real life discussions with mentors and senior leadership and senior salespeople. And that combination is explosive. It provides so much value because you're getting the boost of both. You've got a safe environment to practice as a salesperson, get the feedback. So MindTickle does have feedback loops. They're not real time. The feedback comes back when at the evening or the next day, the reviewer gets time to watch that video and provide feedback, and combine that with real interactive discussions. So that combination works out really well.
Good. All right. So the next thing that you do, in addition to the role plays, then is reinforcement. And this sort of, I think, harkens back to your gamification when you started the company.
That's right.
Is sort of in the moment advice and tips and techniques and updated product knowledge even that are delivered to the reps. And I sort of like this idea of you're prepping for a call, and before you hop on the call, you give yourself a little quick product test or something.
Right. And this is where, when I speak with sales leaders, the question I ask them is, if as a VP of sales, you were in a board meeting, and in the board meeting, the leadership decided to enter a new vertical, create a new value proposition, or pivot into a different direction. How many days does it take between that board meeting to when the salespeople start playing out that new messaging in the sales conversations? And the answer could vary anywhere between 3 weeks to 3 months. Sometimes it takes a quarter to realign your sales team.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
Now, MindTickle helps compress that timeline because we provide this very agile way of communicating dynamic information and change. So an example would be as simple as that same weekend after that board meeting, the VP of sales goes on the webcam, records themselves a message to the sales team, pushes it out, and it goes out as a push notification on everybody's mobile app. Within 2 days, MindTickle data will show you that 60 to 70% of the sales team would have consumed that video and reacted to it. So they would have either liked that video, posted a comment, or answered a question in the quiz, and demonstrate that they have consumed the video, they understand what the new direction is, and a confirmatory test that, yes, I know enough to now start playing this out. And you can even confirm it with a role play where this person says, hey, this is a recording of how I'm going to play out this messaging. And then we have intelligent reminders where some people who didn't get to it in the next 3 days, they start getting those smart push notifications and email reminders saying, hey, this is a really critical update pushed by Joe Smith, the VP sales, and he needs you to have this as part of your messaging by week 2. So we do this intelligent reminders. So especially for large distributed teams, this is a great complement to the Monday call. On Monday call, VP Sales gets on the call and says, guys, we had this board meeting. This is our new messaging. Great. Now, how many of you have already played the message? Half of them has already played that message. So because of technology now becoming part of the workflows on how sales leaders and teams, sales operations teams, sales enablement teams are closing this information gap, getting new updates, new features, new objections, all of these real time. It takes less than 15 minutes. It takes 10 minutes to publish a new update. We're closing that gap, which earlier would be 2 weeks, 3 weeks of production time to get a marketing approved message going out to the sales team. That model doesn't work in an agile environment anymore.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great approach. It's all mobile based, which is really important for today's sales force. And Yeah, and the constant reinforcement, learning best effectives we talked about earlier in small bites and in continuous learning.
That's right.
That's not episodic. And that's, I think, really the two things that you're beginning to address. Maybe when we finish the conversation, I've got another idea for you. But
love to hear that.
But I think it's the right approach because you have to engage sales reps all the time. And one of the big culture changes I think that's happening, you talked about the dynamic business environment, is that the gap that still exists is that sales reps in general don't look at learning being one of the core skills that's required for their job. And there's been good books written about this recently, but that's really critical. That they say, okay, I'm prepared to invest less time watching TV to be able to learn more about my job and my skills because it's really demanding because it's changing so fast.
Absolutely. Yeah. So one advice there is don't call it training, don't call it learning, call it sales readiness. It changes the mindset. And that's what
sales readiness.
Accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. Sales readiness. I like that. I'll steal it. I'll use it in my own work. So that's good. We'll support you with that. So, well, good. Well, great information. We're going to move to the last segment of the show where I have some standard questions I ask my guests. First one's a hypothetical scenario I pose to everybody. And this is, you're the star of the hypothetical scenario. You've just been hired as a new sales leader for a company whose sales have stalled out and they're kind of stuck. And senior management wants change in a hurry. So what two things would you do your first week on the job that could have the biggest impact?
So if I'm a sales leader and the sales are stuck, then...
Yeah, it doesn't mean they necessarily stop, but they're not going where they need to be going.
Yeah. Oh, great point. So I would investigate, there are always two parts of the problem. It's either not meant to be sold or it's not being sold right. So first thing I would do is investigate if it is the value proposition itself has a challenge or the process has a challenge. And the easy litmus test to figure that out. And once you've figured out which department the challenge is in, it's about taking a process engineering view of the problem. If it's a process challenge, you can look at the people, process, technology and evaluate. If it's a value proposition challenge, then you got to go back to the drawing table, take a very objective outside in of the market and the problem you're solving and speak to customers and see if your value proposition is still relevant and you need to go back and rebuild. Sometimes that is the answer.
Okay. Good. All right. So I've got some rapid fire questions for you. You can give me one-word answers or you can elaborate as much as you want. So the first one is, when you're selling, personally, when you are out selling, what's your most powerful sales asset?
Credibility and domain expertise.
Name one tool you use for managing sales that you can't live without.
My CRM.
Which one do you use?
Salesforce.com.
Okay. Who's your sales role model?
I'll have to say my sales role model is Mark Roberge because I have a lot in common with him. He's not a traditional salesperson and he's brought a very scientific approach to building the business.
Yes.
So I'll have to say he's my role model.
Excellent. So if I were to ask you the one book that every salesperson should read?
Predictable Revenue.
Okay, by Aaron Ross. Have you read his new book?
I have read excerpts. It's on my to-do list.
Okay, it's a good book. You should read it. It's like, case studies, what people took predictable revenue, what they do with it. Yeah, excellent. And he was on my show just a couple weeks ago. So, all right, tough question for you is, what music is on your playlist right now?
I'm a big fan of instrumental music, and it's a combination of Yanni and piano by candlelight. So it's all instrumental.
Okay. All right. What's the first sales activity you do every day?
I check in on what are the topmost things I need to get done today to accomplish my sales objectives. Sometimes it's about coaching my sales team member who's trying to lock in a deal for that day. So it's about going into spending 10 minutes and figuring out where I can create the most impact and support my team.
Okay. Well, excellent. Well, I want to thank you for joining me. My guest today has been Mohit Garg. Mohit, tell people how they can find out more about MindTickle.
Yeah, we'd love to get more feedback from the listeners, and I can be reached directly at mg@mindtickle.com. As for my company's products and learning more about how we help our customers succeed, you can learn at mindtickle.com or follow our handle on Twitter at MindTickle. And love to hear from you on Twitter. My handle is Mohgar. It's Mohgar.
Okay, excellent. And yeah, all this information will be on the show notes page. So if you didn't write that down in time, it's going to be there. You can find that and how to get hold of Mohit. So thank you very much again for being on the show. And remember, friends, make it a part of your day every day to deliberately learn something new to help you accelerate your success. And I say this every day. It's not just this episode. So one easy way to do that is to make Accelerate a part of your daily routine. You can listen to it first thing in the morning on your commute, in the gym, or maybe include it as part of your morning sales huddle. But make sure you don't miss any of my conversations with top business experts like my guest today, Mohit Garg, who shared his expertise about how to accelerate the readiness of your sales team. So thanks for joining us, and until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.